Hi, and welcome to the StartStack Arena. My name is Elizabeth McCauley. I'm the founder and CEO of StartStack. We're really excited to have everyone here in the Product Market Fit Lab, a webinar around content marketing foundations. So thank you all for being here. Go ahead and introduce myself. I am leading a business that's focused on commercialization for very tiny companies, getting them to product market fit as quickly as possible. We are experts in commercialization concerning core business strategy, product advisory, product and content marketing, and also do operational digital marketing as well as part of helping these founders and our clients get to market with precision. Today, I'd like to bring Stuart on the stage with us here and introduce Stuart Mexes in a second here. First, our goals for a session is to talk about content marketing and talk about content marketing from the perspective of, utilizing content marketing to help drive brand awareness, pipeline, making sure that that pipeline is the right pipeline, you're attracting the right buyers. So our goals for a session is to help you walk away with some new ideas and new concepts. We probably won't talk a lot about AI in this session, which makes me really happy. We'll introduce Stuart Mexes here in a second, who leads content at StartStack. We'll talk about what's changed a lot in content in 2026, and then essentials for content marketing foundations, and then how you can engage with us in our upcoming workshop called the Content Foundations Workshop, July 13th through the 16th. So with that, let me go ahead and bring Stuart on stage with us. And I'm really excited that he is here with us. Stuart, welcome.
Stuart Mexes. You can probably tell from my accent I'm from the UK. I'm from London originally, but right now I live in the middle of the country in an area called the Midlands. So yeah, a bit about me. I'm originally a creative writer by trade, the author of a successful fiction series called Hassia Chronicles. But on the more traditional business side, for over 15 years, I've held content roles with major companies like Bang & Olufsen, Deliveroo. And my most recent previous role was head of content with the highly successful company Leonardo AI. Under my Wordsmith brand, I've written for countless small companies in freelance capacity. I've helped with content creation, strategy, content marketing, brand identity, you name it. I'm now full-time with StartStack as head of content, handling a lot of the messaging and the content, which I absolutely love. I just wanted to add as well, I've been on a bit of a fantastic journey with them over the past year with StartStack. As a creative writer, I was actually initially someone who kind of turned away from AI, right, in writing. However, through my use of it and deep learning, which is in and of itself a really personal and rewarding experience in any subject, I've developed a kind of really newfound respect for AI, becoming a domain expert in training it for content use. But that does come with a caveat. It's an incredible assistive tool for your own writing, can augment your own creativity if used correctly. If it's allowed to take the wheel predominantly, it can cause content laziness, it can diminish your own creativity, and it can lead to AI slop, which we've all probably seen around us right now in the business world. So it's all about understanding what's going on as we'll see as we go on. But it's great to be here with you all. Great to be with you, Liz, and co-host this session. So yeah, let's dive in.
Yeah, it's been so fun to work with you this past year, Stuart. I think you've been with us a little bit more than a year.
Yeah.
And I have fully seen your transformation from being an expert writer to a writer who's an expert in AI too. And one of the things about a year ago, I was so frustrated with our content, where our content was going, and I couldn't put my finger on it. And then it just kind of came to me one day. It's like, I can teach people AI, I can't teach people how to write. Writing is, and the mastery of language is what is so critical in working with AI, period, but particularly working with AI as it relates to marketing. So we're going to talk about some areas that we see happening, and we want to talk about kind of these 4 areas. First is the contemporary industry. Then the question that I asked you, simple question, and stopped you right in your tracks. Stuart, what's content, right? We're going to talk about that. Why content's important in business, and then what I call day zero marketing. And I won't steal my own thunder, but I really love these concepts that apply to tiny business. So with that, let's go to contemporary content industry first. AI is cannibalizing itself.
Yeah.
We knew this would happen. We see it right now.
Absolutely, yeah. It's cannibalizing itself right now. So not only are people getting better at noticing AI, which they are, but it's becoming more obvious because the quality is actually going downhill. Like when it first came out, I think it was around 4 years ago. It quite quickly got to a level that was really good. It was great as an assistive tool, to help people who maybe couldn't write, streamline their process. And it was a great tool in general. But now, due to there just being so much AI content online, originally it was trained on high quality writing content. Now it's being trained on itself. So essentially what you have is like a copy of a copy, a bit like if you photocopy something, right? The more you photocopy it, the lower the quality. And that's what we're seeing right now in AI. Essentially what you're getting is this like GPT of sameness, and everything kind of sounds and looks the same. That's what we're experiencing right now. So yeah, it's cannibalizing itself.
I also liked this concept. We've been thinking about it for a long time because we think content is hard, even though we use AI in our process. And so I'd like for you to talk for a little bit of, despite AI and the ability to just spin up a ton of content quickly, why is content hard?
Yeah, so AI has essentially made the process of creating content easier. You can produce it more quickly, but content is still hard. Even though it's easier, ironically, getting it to land is becoming harder than ever. There's more content, as I just said, more than ever out there in the sphere. And it comes in all different forms. And essentially, you have to jostle for space and make your voice heard above your competitors and everything else. Plus, content creation itself, and people don't realize this, it's still a very largely process orientated operation. It requires its own consistent pipeline to be successful. So, content will always be hard, but it's about doing it in the right way, which we'll look at.
hmm I find it's interesting. We're so process oriented as a company in all the work we do. And when we know the process and we can do something in the same way over and over and over again, the way that content pipeline works, where it hits creative, where creative's not having to rework things, I think we would do that really well. But I think our brains are wired to, if we don't know the process, if we can't write down the process, we don't know what we're doing yet. And so I like how we're focused that way.
Absolutely.
We're in a trust recession, right? How do we know what to believe? And I saw something yesterday on the platform formerly known as Twitter. We now have AI influencers you can hire. So, interesting,
Yeah.
right?
It's prolific. It's everywhere, and there is a huge trust recession. You're right. I saw a recent study. It says that 86% of consumers can now actively spot it, like generic, unedited AI, and 36% of buyers said that if they saw a brand actively using that kind of low effort AI that you see, that it would actively destroy their trust in the brand. So it's really important, not to overuse it. Yeah.
People also want to know you're not perfect. I think that this authenticity, kind of the thing is swinging back, right? People want in real life, people want real people want people that, don't have it all buttoned up. I think this is driving to a theme around authenticity.
100%. That's such a key word. Buyers want authentic, founder-led, if they can, content. You want content that speaks to their pain points and it's value-led, right? Essentially, what they want is someone to say, they want, do you know me? And do you understand what I actually need? Buyers want to feel valued and that their struggle is actually understood. And if you do that with authentic content that they can engage with, then yeah, you're well on your way.
Awesome. All right. Here's the question. What's content? Took us a while to build this framework, right? But I love it. We test it over and over again. Got a firm understanding that content is really foundational for building a business. And it really supports the brand promise.
100%. Yeah. I mean, it's a difficult question to answer because, we hear the word all the time, but people don't really dive into what it actually means. But so from a business perspective, content, it's the front door to your company. It's how, your company presents itself to the world. It helps buyers know your mission, your vision, your purpose, your value, essentially everything you do and why you exist. And to be clear, that includes any external facing messaging that you have in all mediums. Traditionally, in the business world, when we think of content, we think of written content, right? But it includes spoken, like podcasts, or visual, like this webinar that we're doing right now. Any way, essentially, that you communicate with a message externally to your buyers and potential customers is content. And that's why it needs a consistent through line through whatever medium it's on.
Mhm. It's got a job to do too. It can't just be content for the sake of content. And I think this is really where people struggle is, what is the job of content essentially?
Yeah. So in business, content must go beyond information. It's essentially got to be a proof of concept. You have to explain to customers why your product or service works, and specifically, why should they choose you over your competitors, right? Doing this successfully, which can be hard, but it compels action and it builds that trust and also long-term loyalty that you're looking for.
I think sometimes when we're working with people and creating content for others and for ourselves, being clear, direct, honest, and the hardest skills. And we have a little bit of blip on the radar there. So UFO flew right through our
Went right overhead. Yeah. Yeah.
clear, concise, direct, with no glitches. Talk about that for a second.
Yeah. So look, right now we've all seen it. We live in an age dominated by misinformation. There's fakeness everywhere. There's ambiguity, and customers, like we just said, they're crying out for authenticity. So to mitigate against that, content now has to be direct. It has to be clear. It has to resonate, and it has to come from an authentic voice that's true to your company, has substance, and is true about everything it says. Quite simply put, quite a bold statement, but the age of hyperbole and posturing, it's over.
Mm-hmm. And I think what's hard about this market is it's moving so fast. I've never seen, we've been talking about this for years. The tech is doing the heavy lifting for the tech, and it's really hard for companies to keep up with, what's coming next, what I should be, what should I be adapting to? And so I like this concept that, content's got to be firm, but also flexible. So
100%.
how do you create that? How do you do both?
Yeah. So, right now in 2026, business, like you said, it moves so fast. It's rapid, right? There's new mediums, there's trends, there's methods of communication. It's always coming out. And I know that it can feel like these goalposts, they're constantly shifting, right? But the problem is, if you try and chase trends and change all the time, you'll be like your content's gonna be like a leaf in the wind, right? It's all over the place. It's reaching no one. Good content always stays true to itself and the company, stays rooted in the archetype and brand DNA, which we'll actually talk about a little bit in a while. But it has to be just adaptable enough that it can accommodate for these changing landscapes that we're seeing.
Yeah, and for us, when we started our content journey exactly almost 3 years ago, in our first paper we published, it really it moves the needle for small businesses, and certainly if done right, in a way that the things that we're talking about for larger companies too. I mean, this completely matters.
100%. Yeah. And this is the thing, though, is that content, it's not a byproduct of business, right? A lot of founders, they see it as a chore, right? I get it. An afterthought, something that they just have to do, albeit like a little bit reluctantly, which is why a lot of it gets farmed out to AI, right? Look, it is tough, but there are ways to make it easier, and we'll discuss that, but it should never be an afterthought. What people need to reframe in their brain is that content is a core engine that drives growth. If it's used correctly, it's absolutely huge for both awareness and sales pipeline as well.
Yeah, agree. All right, so let's now talk about why it's important. Start with the narrative.
Yeah, sure. So this is important. So essentially, it can help you own the narrative in your sector. Now, if you don't produce any content, or the content that you produce is low quality and doesn't have any value, then you don't get to lead any conversations. That means that you're always reactive as a company, right? You're watching your competitors dictate the landscape in your niche. Conversely, though, producing high quality content that grabs buyers, makes them think, then you get to start to control how the market defines its problems, and then you offer the solutions, right?
Yeah, we work with a lot of companies that are literally in category creation, or they're moving into a space between several markets and, kind of planting their flag and saying, this is what we do. This doesn't exist. This is a new type of solution. Maybe there's only 2 or 3 companies in the market doing anything like it. And so a lot of the founders that we work with are domain experts in their field. They know more about the thing they know about than almost anybody else. And this is why this gets really important to talk about and content to really capture their unique market. And one of the best things about defining the market is you get to write the rules.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. And the unexpressed market demand as well. I mean, I think it's around 95% of buyers that are out there that they're not currently looking at software vendors, but what they're trying to do is actively understand like where their business inefficiencies lie. So again, if you name that, your content names the solution that they didn't know that they needed. That's how you win.
Organic, we've got I know a lot of companies have budgets to run lots of ads and burn down a lot of, marketing dollars, essentially running ads. And most small companies can't do that. And so I think it's, this is just a strategy too for, how to scale your company organically.
Definitely. I mean, ad spend can be great, but it can also be very, very costly, right? But creating high quality content, allows you to scale organically, often, not always, but often without the incremental cost. So what it does is it transforms that human insight into a permanent business asset that educates thousands of people, while it allows your team to actually focus on product delivery instead. And also to add to that, it actually shortens the B2B sales cycle. So by pre-educating, the economic decision makers long before, like a discovery call, you turn cold buyers into warm, high intent targets that are ready to convert. Yeah.
What's emotional resonance? What does that mean?
Yeah. So we love stories at StartStack, right? And I'm a storyteller anyway. So, by using story driven content, that's how you create emotional resonance. What you do is you humanize like complex texts or tech or concepts. And what you do is you frame those solutions around a journey, ones that buyers can emotionally back. That again drastically speeds up decision making and conversions as well.
Awesome. All right, day zero marketing. I made it up.
Day zero marketing, yeah, it's awesome. So look, essentially content is critical long before you launch, right? It helps create a pipeline early on, awareness and sales, as we mentioned, and that's day zero marketing. What it allows you to do, you can validate market demand before you launch. This leverages founder insights. You can test core value propositions in public, and that ensures that you build an audience before ever finalizing products. And on that track, it actually allows you to cultivate and grow organic waitlists, which we love a waitlist, right? That's how you get your sales, with transparent story-driven updates, and that attracts early stage champions who connect with your mission well before you have a sales team.
Yeah, we have been doing some research. We've interviewed about 50 founders over the last 6 months, all in different stages of company building, to understand the messy middle before product market fit. And the common theme across every single person I spoke with and interviewed for our discussion about is the idea to use audience feedback and use feedback from the market to then inform your product. And so when people are engaging, with content and are you're able to warm up that audience, they're more likely to try things, and also that gets right back into the requirements of the entire product. So I know people in the market's very popular right now about building in public, but there's something more here that's really about helping you inform what your product should actually do.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. And if you document the build and the vision, it kind of replaces those traditional sort of product announcements that you see. What you get instead is like a live diary of the startup's evolution. What that does, that's key, is it turns passive onlookers into active co-creators who are invested in the journey. What people want these days, apart from authenticity, is they want to feel like included. They want to be inside the circle, inside the fence. If you're having this content where people are seeing your journey, then they feel like they're inside the fence, and that's exactly what you want. And it also helps establish early domain trust, right? Positions you as an authority out of the gate, and that takes the market perception away from, oh, this is a risky new venture, to, oh, this is a viable solution for us, right?
Right. Okay, I love archetypes. It's my favorite thing. I won't say which one we are. I'll let you steal the thunder there. But I think one of the things that we've been doing for a really long time is helping people understand who their archetype is, as who the brand archetype is as a jumping off point for content. So talk about what archetypes are as foundational for brands.
Yeah, so creating your brand archetype essentially anchors your brand identity. And a brand identity, just in case people don't know, is that, the visual, verbal, and emotional elements that represent your company and distinguish it from your competitors. What this does, it creates a consistent narrative through line that builds trust and loyalty. So there's actually 12 main archetypes. You've got the outlaw, which we got a little bit of in StartStack. And that's like the people that kind of challenge the status quo, right? You've got the jester, that people have probably seen those, people that use companies that use humor to sell. And there's the everyman that people love, which is the one that's like super relatable, we are you, join us, that kind of thing. And a business can actually sometimes touch more than one of these, have a foot in two. Like we do, we have the sage, which is very grounded and informational, and the outlaw, like I said, that kind of challenges the status quo. So usually you'll have up to two. But from a creative writing perspective, it's important. Defining your brand archetype is really important. It's the same as having a central book theme in literature. Let me explain. Without a central theme, a novel has no concept anchor. So, and people might have read books that are like this. They kind of meander. They don't really have a plot. They're kind of all over the place. It loses meaning. In exactly the same way, having an archetype stops your messaging from being weak, inconsistent, and all over the place. So it's super important. And also, just to add, once established, you can actually use your archetype to discover what's called a narrative bridge. That allows you to pull your brand identity into like a compelling story, your origins of your company, your vision, your struggles, your mission. And it changes you from, oh, this is what we do, to this is why what we do matters to you, the buyer.
Yeah, I really think brand archetypes are very powerful for early stage companies, because it also helps inform how you write, the visuals, how the visuals. I remember we had a client one time who was they were the everyman, as is a business, and the creative was just too perfect, and we had to wind it back a little bit to make it more relatable and not so perfect. And that was a really interesting thing that we stumbled into. So even how visuals and how things are happen in post-production, inform how you go ahead and execute how your archetype is expressed in the world.
Absolutely.
I look forward to being more of an outlaw later this year.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that, aren't we? Yeah.
All right, economic buyers. Economic buyers are very important because they're the people that pull out their wallets and make a choice to buy your product or service. So this is not to be confused with an ICP. It's not an ICP. Economic buyer is your key persona that you are marketing to. So
yeah, 100%. Exactly that. So yeah, it is obviously good to target users, the ones that use your product or service. But essentially, you have to try and appeal to economic buyers as well. And that using economic buyer triggers, that stops your messaging from becoming essentially just like a list of features like, oh, we do this, we do that. And it actually shifts the focus to pain points that compels them to make an action. Like we just said, they're the ones that sign the checks, right? So you want to appeal to them as well. And you can do this by having content pillars. Typically it's 3. And what it does is it structures your core themes into strategic boundaries. And that ensures that your solutions through your content, they map directly to a high stake business priority. Examples of this would be like revenue growth, cost optimization, and risk mitigation. And actually, sorry, just to add as well, you can validate this with what we call like the so what filter. And this is a really useful exercise to use. It acts as like a governance guardrail, forcing like every structural, content asset that you create to explicitly show how it does those things, like reduce cost, mitigate risk, or protect profit, for example. So an idea of this would be, the so what. Our software includes automated reporting. So what? Oh, so team leaders can save 5 hours every single week. So what? So they can then reallocate human capital to high growth revenue. Human capital to high value revenue growth. This is like this kind of filtered outcome allows you to have laser precision in your content, and that's what's important.
When you finally land on what that outcome is, that outcome can also be a jumping off point for how to lead in with your content, which is really good because economic buyers really don't buy features, they buy business outcomes. And so that's why this is really important. Users are interested in features, economic buyers are interested in outcomes. And I think, the more pressure there is in business to go fast and break everything, literally, anchoring on outcomes to slow things down and say, this is why this matters. That's what's important there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Content architecture. I love frameworks. Frameworks keep us honest. They keep things on the tracks, literally. So talk about how people should think about their content architecture for their content.
Absolutely. So yeah, just to clarify, so content architecture, it's the framework through which you're able to organize, structure, and scale your content so it reaches your buyers and it drives your brand forward, essentially, right? And hacking this is how you make the process efficient. So first of all, deep topic clusters. These need to replace like superficial, arbitrary commentary that doesn't really say anything. What you need to change that for is like exhaustive domain depth. That proves uncopyable expertise across like technical challenges, operational wins. And each topic cluster is typically like one vertical or a topic or a subtopic, and all the posts that you create stay within that one cluster, right? And also you can have, you have to have a central repository, right? An area where you store everything. It transforms these kind of reactive temporary social updates into a database of permanent assets, right? We have that a lot ourselves. It converts unpredictable creative chore into a repeatable asset vault. Once you've got it stored somewhere.
I think this is an important point because many of the AI systems that we have experimented with and our application that we're building on our own, it's not a content application, it's a business planning application. Constraint absolutely matters. You don't want to put every single asset or piece of content into a thing and then try to create content out of that. It's essentially a giant soup of things, right? And that's doesn't work very well for creating content at all. So it is the key thing that we see in AI native applications that doesn't work. There's just too much information. The AI knows too much, and it breaks core boundary rules of AI native systems.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. So with that as well, to touch on is kind of the battlefield strategy, right? Resource strapped companies. What this does is essentially it concentrates your limited early stage resources on the exact platforms. Here's the thing, right? You want to go to where your buyers live. And when you're, an early stage company, you're trying to do all the things all at once, right? Doing the AI, doing this, doing everything. But you want to go to where your buyers are, but you have to learn to kind of strip out what's not necessary. So, for example, a secondary platform where you could spend the same amount of resources and time, but it's gonna eat that up and not give you a good ROI. You need to kind of cut that out. But like we just said about the AI thing, circling back, the editor-in-chief model, right? This safeguards your company's vocal DNA. Yes, sure, have AI there positioned, but have it as purely a structural building block tool, like an editing tool, rather than the strategic driver. That should always be human.
I agree with that. All right, minimum viable content. I love to pick on MVPs. I also have a concept called minimum viable revenue. Now we've thrown out into the universe minimum viable content plan. Talk about it.
Yeah, love it. So all companies should have one of these. A minimum viable content plan, a BCP. It's a content framework that's at minimum it's required to sustain your brand authority, maintain structure and drive revenue. So it consists of typically you have to have at least a rigid 7-day content plan. And that replaces again like this kind of reactive posting that we talked about with a rigid 7-day like psychological sequence that it balances human authority with commercial intent. And you can do this through what we call like the Goldilocks zone of frequency. So what this is that it protects your digital footprint from being something that I use the term quite a lot, like content bombing. You see it all the time, right? These companies that don't leave you alone. They're constantly posting every minute of every day. And it's frustrating. It's annoying, right? But the other side of the coin on that is kind of the stagnation of barely having any market presence and scraping by. So you have to find that Goldilocks zone of frequency that's kind of right in the perfect zone there. And I would say typically, depending on what platform you're on each platform, it's around 3 or 4 high quality posts a week does that pretty sufficiently. Keeps you in the game, but without kind of bombarding people essentially.
I like the Goldilocks zone. And I think on this point, it doesn't have to be the same every single week. And I think people get stuck on that too. It's like the algorithms are constantly changing. It doesn't make a lot of sense to try to chase algorithms. What helps and what really matters is consistency.
Absolutely, yeah, consistency, and that means you can reuse assets as well. Having a zero waste strategy is really important for young companies that don't have the resources to make things at scale. So turning everyday social posts into kind of permanent assets that sales teams can use to dismantle buyer objections, price, risk, internal capability, for example. And also you need to be able to vet against commercial filters. So this ensures that like every post that you create, it has to, like we've gone back to, solve a buyer's specific problem. And that stops your content kind of just drifting into these kind of random pointless updates that don't really say anything.
Yeah, nobody wants to see that I didn't get my nails done. All right. I love Bigtree and sawdust systems. I never heard sawdusting as a term about content until we started working together, but talk about the Bigtree strategy.
Yeah, I love this one. It's critical. It's brilliant. So what you essentially do with the Bigtree and sawdust strategy is that first of all, you anchor your output to one root asset, right? So this is the Bigtree. So let's say, for example, you're doing a long form article or a webinar like this or a podcast or whatever it is that you're doing as part of your kind of general company operations. That serves as your long form Bigtree content, right? What you then do is what we call sawdusting. So you break that down into 10 pieces. You can use AI here if you need to make that process easier. And then you kind of have them sectioned out. So what you do then is you sawdust that into different areas, and that turns this one asset that you had into lots of different ones. For example, it could be, 5 really high quality social posts. It could be 3 direct sales messages. It could be 2 newsletter blocks, whatever you want it to be, but it comes from that one tree essentially.
But it needs to anchor to the content architecture, and that's the important point, because sometimes when people sawdust things without understanding how does it fit into the broader content strategy, that can start to create drift.
Absolutely, yeah. It's got to be within the cluster that it should, we mentioned earlier. It's got to stay in its tree essentially and be very highly focused on what it's talking about, and that makes it more effective. But if you want to use, here's the key one, right? If you want to use AI, and I know people do, it does make things easier. You have to use what's called single product AI constraint. This is massive. AI, we talked about this earlier, is used badly, right? The soup analogy. You just chuck everything in and just kind of like, please do this for me. It doesn't work. It really degrades the quality. What you have to have is little mini soups, right? Each one is a certain different thing. So essentially, one is specifically for direct sales messaging. One is for newsletter blocks or LinkedIn posts. And those AI are laser focused on that specific topic and style only. They don't deviate from it. Mm-hmm. Constraint actually forces your AI assistant to kind of operate within a strictly boundaries of like a single offering. And that stops you from falling into that trap that we see of this kind of generic robot text. And it should become an expert in that niche. but, and you know what I'm going to say next, right? It should only ever be used for the heavy lifting and the structure. It should not replace human creativity. It should be the passenger, not the driver.
Yeah, I love the hate on human in the loop. I don't believe it. I believe that people do work. AI is part of the process, and in content, this is just in spades because, um, working with AIs, training them very narrowly to do very specific things and know about very specific areas. We have found that helps with outcomes in lots of different areas.
Mhm.
I think it's interesting too for early companies where it's not maybe for companies that are really just getting started and their ideas are emerging. Maybe their product isn't fully defined yet. I almost feel like you've got like working with how the tree is growing. It's not really fully formed, and so in this case, like anchoring on certain concepts that they absolutely know are important while
Yeah,
allowing other concepts to emerge. So, in this sense, for working with early companies, a content architecture evolves. It's not going to be, once and done. It's
absolutely.
something that's going to evolve over time. If you can build it in a way where, that flexibility is built in, and you know how things fit, that tends to help.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely evolves over time, through multiple iterations. Absolutely.
All right, so we've got a workshop coming up. We're running these 4-hour live workshops. I love what we've been doing here. It's been very, very valuable for people. And this really is our first workshop. That's the content lab, or
Yeah,
the product market fit lab around content. And what's happened here is people have told us we need to be creating content. Content's hard. It's expensive. I need more guidance around this. And so what we're doing here is essentially um, sharing about how we do it with people.
exactly. Yes, really looking forward to this. It's going to be hosted by yours truly. It's a 4-day workshop, just 1 hour a day, so it's really easy to fit into schedules. It's going to dive really deep into like the nuances of content foundations and marketing, so that you can market with confidence. So yeah, it's running over 4 consecutive days, 13th to the 16th of July. I mean, there's loads of stuff in there. It includes, learning your company archetype and brand story, setting up your content architecture. Gosh, what else does it do? How to build an organic strategy, how to avoid hype chasing. That's a big one. And another one, how to separate vanity metrics from real buying signals. The one that we love as well, the 4-hour content work week, learn that too. And the biggest one is that you'll actually leave with a 30-day content plan and a clear path forward, which is huge. It kind of not just tell you the things, teach you how to like implement it yourself as you go on.
All right. I'm excited about this.
Yeah, me too.
All right. So, talk about kind of what you get from the content marketing workshop. 30-day content plan is always pretty important for people to get started.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really important. So yeah, you get the well, first of all, not only do you get the content and all of the things that I just mentioned, you can build the content confidence, which is huge. Things people aren't confident around, content and how to produce it essentially. How to get organic growth, how to stop chasing trends, but also you get access to Start Stack Academy. I'll hand back over to you, Liz, to tell them about the awesome academy that we run.
Yeah, so we brought to market Netflix for entrepreneurship, 10-minute or less learning journeys for less than a cup of coffee a day. So what we're doing is we're combining these 4-hour, 1 day, 1 hour a day, back-to-back labs with access to the StarStack Academy. Um, some of the content in the academy is tied to core business planning, knowing your markets and buyers, defining your product, financial models, all the things really you need to go from 0 to $1 million journey. So we brought that to market. We're bundling that in with the lab. And also we've got other events that are coming next week. We're running the Ideas to Direction workshop. So this is for founders that have an idea, isn't really formed yet. They don't have an MVP. They're really just stuck on go. And in 4 days, we take you from kind of the early stage to really think about how to move that idea a little bit forward, move the plot forward, so to speak, and get going on how to think about building a company. We also have in the background in the Product Market Fit Lab structure, product management 101, literally. Founders have got to know a lot about stuff, and even if non-technical founders are hiring engineering teams, product management still matters.
Yeah.
Product management matters actually more than anything right now, and making sure that a product is stable and viable and built for scale versus breaks with 2 users. That's usually not great. So what we're doing here in the academy is we're really bringing into focus the things that really matter for early company building.
100%.
And so what we're trying to do here is we're helping people build confidence, helping people with outcomes, and establishing through these different types of workshops a way to move the business forward essentially. So I've loved this conversation, Stuart, around content.
Great.
And so this is how you secure your seat for the Product Market Fit Lab, the content workshop. We will definitely follow up here. Scott, if you could drop that link in the chat here for people, that would be great. And there it's dropped in the chat. You can sign up for the workshop there. And for people following along, we've been publishing 2 newsletters for more than a year now. We've never missed the deadline, even when we had to fire a newsletter platform. That's a whole separate story. We publish for 2 audiences, the Friends of StartStack. So these are people that follow us, that are rooting for us as we build in public and have evolved our journey, and also for founders that trust us and are on this journey too. 2 different versions of the Market Edge by StartStack. So you can subscribe there, or also send us some feedback at hello@startstack.ai. So with that, we'll ask some questions. Do we have any questions from the audience? All right. I don't know, Scott, if you can see the chat. Maybe some of the questions are not coming through. Drop questions across all the platforms that we are streaming to. One of the things that comes up quite often as people are utilizing AI in content writing, videos become, editing videos and all kinds of things, is like, how do you connect content to revenue? And it's a hard question, right? So Stuart, what do you think about this? There's always this classic, argument between marketing and sales. Is like, what does marketing do for me lately? What is the purpose of content and marketing as it relates to pipeline?
Yeah, so absolutely. So one of the biggest things is awareness, right? You could be the best company in the world producing the best products and the best services, but if people don't know about you, then you're not going to make a dime, right? So it's got to be able to kind of raise awareness to start with. So that's, like I said before, it's how you interface with the world. So this is who we are, and this is why you should trust us over the competitors. And beyond that, as you start to go kind of down the line, it's how you start to build trust. Because again, you might have a really good product, but if people aren't understanding how you operate and what the company is, they're not going to spend their money with you. So you need to kind of build that trust and loyalty over time. So that's why it kind of walks parallel, with product and, with the company building essentially itself. And that's why it's so important. And that is why it shouldn't be an afterthought. You have to have it coming out there consistently and having that high qualities that people understand, who you are. It's as important as everything else that the company does.
Yeah, and content map to the buyer journey. So top of funnel content versus mid funnel versus closing type of content. I mean, all of that needs to be mapped out. That's a part of more buyer journey content mapping versus some of the things we've been talking about, which is more higher level content architecture. Content architecture anchors to that buyer journey and what to share when and why. So well, this has been a great session, Stuart. So we'll go ahead and wrap up. If anybody wants to get in touch with us, find us at hello@startstack.ai. And thanks for joining.
Thank you so much, everyone. Take care.